keep that in there. That's the transition. All right, bro.
Good to go.
Welcome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
So, I feel like there's a lot of advice out there for, like, the whole term of entrepreneur has kind of became like a buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of people spewing advice who I don't know if really should be.
Yeah.
And the reason that I wanted to have you on is because I feel like you are someone who's actually credible to give someone advice. Someone who's, say, like 18 years old, just got out of high school.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to like focus a lot on just talking about like entrepreneurship, online business, that type of thing. But I feel like a good starting point would be for you to just kind of catch people up to speed on like what you've done, what you're doing,
For sure.
who you are, so people know that they like have a reason to listen to you, right?
Right on. Yeah. So, gosh, it must be like 8 years ago at this point. You was broke, working a dead-end job I didn't like. I got arrested, dropped out of school. So life was just in disarray, shambles, blah, blah, blah. Eventually it came to a point where I wanted to start improving my life, specifically because I had gotten this job, right? So I got hired to be a manager at a video store, right? So not a glamorous job at all, but like based on everything that had already happened, like I saw that as a really good opportunity for me, right? So in order for me to get good at that job and then level up my career, which I eventually did, I basically started studying different self-improvement practices, right? So I was reading a lot, studying a lot, basically because I wanted to become a better manager at this job. I wanted to improve my life. And so the self-improvement advice that I implemented in my own life did start to work well. I started to do really well at that job. I got a new job, eventually becoming a marketing director at a marketing agency. So like all that stuff was working. But then along the way, I started sharing some of the different things that I was learning, right? So I'd be on Facebook and I'd say, oh yeah, I just read this book. Here's a tip I learned from that. I started sharing like little things that I was learning along the way. And eventually a buddy reached out to me and actually asked me to write articles for his website, right? So he had this random blog and he just reached out to me. He must have noticed that I had like this penchant for writing. So he reached out to me to write for his website. And I'm like, yeah, sure, dude. Like, what do you want me to write about? And I was like, he's like, you could write about whatever you want. So I wrote one article on that website. The next day he posted on his Facebook page and it got like, I don't know, like 12, 13 likes, something like that. But for me, I was like, oh shit, like someone actually wants to hear what I have to say. So that was like 8 years ago. And I've literally been writing every single day since then. Never took a break, never stopped. Like literally since that very first article I wrote, instantly hooked. Been writing every single day, right? So at first I was just writing for free. I had picked up a couple freelance jobs. I really wasn't making much, but then eventually I started to try some different routes to monetize my writing. So I published a book, my first book, The Destiny Formula, published that on Amazon, self-published it. That one did okay as an experiment, but I was still kind of fumbling around, trying different things. And then eventually I found this website called medium.com. And the way that Medium works is that you get paid based on how many people read your articles each month, right? So I started writing on that website, really plugged away at it. Things just went crazy, and I was able to build a really big following over there. I think I made $10,000 a month for like 17 months in a row. I was the number one ranked writer in terms of earnings on that website 6 months, back to back to back to back. So yeah, that was really what's kind of springboarded my career. And then through that, I was able to do other ventures like publish my second and third book, build this email list, do different mentoring programs through what I learned. And then, I've transitioned to this role now to where after I had been writing for really a long time, like 5-6 years, a lot of people kept asking me questions like, how do I become a writer? How do I make money with my writing? This, and that, right? So I kind of waited until I had really practiced and gotten that skill first before I felt like I wanted to go heavy into teaching others how to do it, right? So I'd say probably it wasn't until like 2021 and then this year, 2022, where I really kind of went heavy, writing guru, like here's how to write, here's how to make money writing. But that's because I felt really confident in being able to tell people that, because I had been doing it on my own for like 5 or 6 years, and I had already made like multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars just directly from my words, right? So that would be from medium revenue and from revenue from my books. Like I was just making money doing that. So like I wasn't selling courses to make money. That was just me learning that skill and getting better at it, practicing it a lot. And then a lot of people kept reaching out. So I eventually started making products. So now I would say I'm in that space where I am in that e-learning space, and I am teaching people how to do things. And I think it's a really good space.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned a lot from creators in that space. But what I think some people are skeptical about now is where people who are kind of like jumping into it like instantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without having, giving themselves some time to like even get good at what they're telling other people to do. So I wrote this article like a week or two ago, and it was like, don't be a creator who their first gig is teaching other creators how to be creators, right? And so like the space is fine, like teaching creators, teaching writers, helping entrepreneurs, all like those are lucrative businesses, but I think it's just important to make your stamp elsewhere first, and then at least, get the results on your own, or, do something like take on clients for free, help them get the results, then you can get clients, right? So as long as you have some mechanism where you've established that you know what you're doing, either through your own efforts or through doing that trial basis, then like you're totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the issue we have now is kind of like this large proliferation of like, so, like everyone's the coach, so like who's being coached, right? Or everyone's business is helping other people make money, which is fine. Like that's one of the primary ways you are going to be able to charge people money, is if you help them make money. But I would just tell people to like go through in some mechanism, like earn their stripes, right? So like even when I first started writing the self-improvement stuff, it was more like, okay, here, I read a book about this, right? Here are some of the things that I thought about. Here are the things that I implemented, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a new way to be a successful content creator in this day and age, it's not like you can't help people or give them any sort of advice, but a better way to do it would just kind of be documenting your process a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So really just like if you're like you want to start a fitness channel, okay, talk about what you did to lose weight, right? If you are wanting to create a channel where you're talking about sales, okay, you have a sales job, talk about what you did to land your most recent client, right? So you can go through and help people and share insights, because I think it's really valuable, but just having a little bit of that like I'm documenting along the way and I'm not perfect, as opposed to like jumping out of the gun and being like I'm the, end all be all, teacher of how to do these things. It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
just pump your brakes a little bit and just give yourself time to practice, right? So we both are big fans of Alex Hormozy, right? And one of the things he says, he's like, one of the reasons you're not making money is you're just not very good. He's like, you're actually just not good at what you do yet, and you just need to have the time to get good at what you do. So I think the ones who take the time to get good at what they do will last, and the ones who are instantly looking for the clout, the money, the likes, like if that's your initial motivator, it's going to be really hard for you.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about like getting good at what you do. And for you, it was writing. What was it about writing that kind of like got you hooked? Like, could you kind of unpack just like the idea of writing and what it does for you, and how that kind of was the thing that you wanted to pursue and that became your craft?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's been for as long as I can remember, I've had this interest in words, right? So even when I was like in middle school, I would write poems. I would like write poems, give them to girls, try to make my girlfriends. Like, so I was always into that. Like I'd be in class, when I was little, they would have me. So I was like always a really, really fast reader. So if we had to read aloud in class, like everyone would be like, all right, Ayo, like, come on, we got to get out to recess. Like, go read it, right? I'd have vocabulary tests in high school or grade school, and I would literally just like look at the list of words like 10 minutes before the test was about to start, memorize all of them, get 100% on the test, right? So I've just always had this fascination with words. B, I've always been like a really curious person. And I've always thought about how the world works, thought about what makes people successful. A lot of the things that I would hear like in society like didn't really make sense to me. So like from a very young age, I was always like, yeah, I'm gonna be in business, I'm gonna be successful, I'm gonna be rich. Like I've always just had that natural curiosity about the world combined with words. And I think it's just this fascination where I just love to talk shit, right? So I think it's even how my friend found me online because I was posting, right? So there's like a lot of people are like passive users of social media. Like they don't really post. Then there's a lot of people who like they're posters where they just always like they always have something to say. So I always have something to say. I'm always thinking about something, and for anyone who will listen to me, like I'll kind of rant on and on about it. So yeah, I think I got very lucky to where I had a pretty good idea that this was something that I wanted to do for like a really, really long time. And then someone presented me the opportunity to do it. Then, yeah, it was all she wrote. I just literally, I never struggled with motivation to write at all, which is why I always tell people, like, focus on like what your lane is and what your aptitudes are, because it's going to be a lot easier for you to compete with people, right? So for a lot of writers, they struggle to get the words down. They struggle with writer's block. They struggle with consistency. I've literally never got writer's block ever.
Do you think the people who struggle with that, is that maybe a sign that writing's not their thing?
Honestly, yes.
Yeah.
I do feel that way from time to time, right? So it's like a balance, because I can help someone like so here's what I'd say the difference is, right? So for me, it wasn't necessarily that I had gotten writer's block. It was more so that before someone gave me that opportunity, I kind of like dicked around and didn't do anything with it, right? But then once I got started, it was pretty natural, right? So I can take someone who has had an interest in writing, and then I can introduce them to the writing world, and then like once I introduce them and give them like the basic building blocks, and like they're kind of good to go.
Right.
But yeah, there are some people who I've noticed it online, especially in places like Medium. Like even for me, it's like from day one, like my writing wasn't very good, but I instantly understood what an article was supposed to be. Right? It's supposed to have a headline. It's supposed to have a premise. It's supposed to have some logical structure. To where I see some writers like they have a total blind spot to it. Like they don't intuitively understand what it's supposed to be. And for those people, it's really, really hard for them to be successful. Yes. All the writers that I know that are at my level, they had somewhat of an aptitude for it. Like even when their writing sucked, it was still pretty good, right? Structure wise. And they took to it relatively quickly, and they kind of were off to the races, right? So like honestly, my most successful students were the ones who they were already working on their writing before they found me, right? So they were working on their writing before they found me. They had a writing habit. They just needed me to like make a couple tweaks, right? So I've taken some different online courses about writing where I was already writing on my own, but there was just a couple of skills I needed to add to my tool belt, and then I used them, right? So I saw this really good tweet from this guy who was like, the people who usually do well with online courses, they were the ones they were already gonna succeed anyway, but taking that program kind of like shortcut their success, right, and gave them the information they needed to go right away. But yeah, in general, I tend to find that people who are successful, A, have an aptitude, and B, they're somewhat of a self-starter, right? So I used to be like lazy and procrastinate a lot, but I guess I would turn that over to you. Like, to what degree do you feel like, ambition, like, do you feel like ambition is an innate? Do we have a different capacity for it? Or do you feel like it's something that can be learned? Because I already feel like I've been naturally ambitious pretty much for as far back as I can remember. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like for me, it's been innate. So I don't know if it can be learned, but just thinking back to in high school, I had a ton of ambition for sports. And I talked about this on my last podcast with my friend Will. He was the one who trained me. He was my basketball trainer since I was in like 4th grade.
Nice.
And it was literally a thing as like an 8th grader. I was getting up in the morning at like 6 a.m. in the summer where all my friends were like sleeping in, going to the pool, you know, having fun, hanging out with girls. It was like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. would be our first basketball workout. Go home, go to the gym at noon, lift. Then after lifting, go back to the gym, get some more shots up, and then at evening do like a workout in the pool or go for a run or something. Like a grind as an 8th grader that I don't feel like a lot of people got, but I loved it because I knew what I was going for. I always wanted, obviously at that age, it was like NBA.
Right.
Found out pretty quick that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
either way, there was this ambition to just do more. So like I was willing to just put in the work that other people weren't willing to do.
Yeah.
And then when I stopped playing sports, that thing that I was driving towards left, but the ambition didn't. Like, because I felt so alive doing something every single day, putting in the reps. That gave me a feeling of working towards something that I didn't want to just go the rest of my life without having.
Yeah.
So then that kind of shifted to like entrepreneurship and business. And so for me, ambition has always been something that's been within me. I've always wanted to do something. Like, I don't want to just like kind of sit back and let the river take me where it's going to go. I want to like actually have a say in how my life happens, because I feel like a lot of the time what happens with people that I've seen is they've kind of created a life where they haven't really even had a say on what happens or what they do with their time.
Yep.
And I've always had an ambition to like not let that be the case. I've always had a problem with like people telling me what to do in authority.
Yep.
Ever since a very young age, I could never be told what to do. It just pissed me off.
Yep.
So now, like, having an opportunity to create a life through entrepreneurship where I can do whatever the fuck I want, ambitions never really left me. Yeah. So to answer your question, this is kind of a cop-out, but I don't know if it can be learned. It definitely wasn't learned for me. I felt like it was innate. Maybe someone can learn it. I don't know. I'm not sure. I just haven't had to be forced to learn ambition.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, like so there's like ambition and like motivation, right? And like discipline. So I think like because I create self-improvement content, right? That was like what I did in the beginning, and it did spark a lot of people awake, right? So like I've had people who read my content who've gone on to start their own businesses or do freelancing or pursue their music career, whatever. But I always kind of feel like even like content itself, I feel like it only kind of works for people who are like, it's almost like you were pouring gas on a fire, like where they like there was already like some awareness. Like maybe they weren't like, I didn't always act on it. Like a lot of people, they don't always act on it, but sometimes like if you say a message, it'll kind of click to them where then they'll do something with it, right? But I do believe that some people, for whatever reason, whether it's like, I don't know, upbringing, genetics, like they're just programmed to be worker bees, and there's nothing you can do to help them. There's nothing you can do to fix them. There's nothing you can do to change them, right? So for me, like in there's nothing wrong with that, right? Everyone to each their own. But like now my message, I try to focus my message on like the people who I think are going to be able to do something with it, right? So I broadcast it out to the general public to where I know like 98% of the people is just going to go in and out in one ear and out the other. I'm like, so that's fine. But then there's a handful of people who go on to do really well, right? So even with my writing programs, I understand, like, I can't position it where I can't figure out which one of the people who takes my programs is going to run off with it, right? So, but then there's some who really do. And, like, for people who, like, study how the world works, like, everything in life is like that it's asymmetrical in nature. There's power laws, 80-20 rule, right? So the vast majority of people on social media have, like, no followers, and then there's, like, 1% of people who have all the followers, right? Most people live worker class or middle class, and then there's a couple people who are really like a tiny handful of people who have most of the money. It's like that's just how the way the world works. And I think a lot of people who don't understand that, they think that's unfair, or like they think that there's some way that systems could be constructed where that won't happen, and it's just not possible. Like that's just if you have like a left to your own devices, a free market, whatever, that's going to happen. Because some people are just some people are just crazy ambitious. Like for me, when it comes to levels of ambition, I have a limit. Like when I look at people like, let's say Elon, like I don't want to do that.
Me either.
I don't,
No
I don't,
chance.
I don't want to own 3 separate billion-dollar companies and work, 100-hour weeks. Like there's videos of him where he's like, yeah, dude, like I'm not happy at all. He's like, all I do is work. This is terrible.
Yeah.
But he feels like duty bound and compelled to that mission. So, yeah, I think the best thing for people is to like it's hard to like really be brutally honest with yourself and like have that self-awareness to figure out like where your capacity is, right? So for some people, like I could just tell you off the jump, like not everyone is like their makeup is not everyone has the makeup to be an entrepreneur, like not even close, right? Entrepreneur, like you need to have like that lateral thinking, adaptability, being able to think on the fly, and some people just aren't like that, but they don't have to be. Like you could go get a really good job in a really good state in a really good company, make $200,000 a year, great. You go work in sales, make a couple $100,000 a year. Maybe you don't want to run the company, you just want to sell shit. Cool. Yeah. You want to get into a trade and make a lot of money doing that trade. Plumbers, electricians, pulling down $250,000 a year in some places, right? And so find what that is and then run with it,
I didn't mean to cut you off, but good. I wanted to say this before I forgot it. I think with entrepreneur becoming a buzzword, I think a lot of people think that they're like less than if they're doing one of those things you were just describing. Yeah. Like if they do choose to become a plumber and work in the trades and make good money, part of them might feel like, oh, well, it's not the entrepreneur thing that's glamorized, right, therefore I'm less than, which I don't think is the case, because if everyone, well, maybe a society could exist where everyone's an entrepreneur, but it would have to look a lot different than ours does now. Yeah. Like if everyone was an entrepreneur, it seems like there'd be a lot of systems that would fall apart.
Yeah, for sure. And it has to be the way that it is, right? Like there's that pyramid society. Like the society wouldn't function without someone to fix your plumbing or do your electric or serve you food at the restaurant or do your hair or, all these different pieces are needed. But one thing I want other people to understand is like being an entrepreneur is not necessarily the easiest way to make money. Like there's not just some glitz and glamour. Like I saw this, speaking of Hormozis, Layla, she posted this thread and said like only 6% of entrepreneurs make more than 6 figures. Only 6%, right? More like in terms of the odds of your success, going and getting a STEM degree, your odds of making 6 figures are basically 100%. Like if you know what you're doing and you find a good job somewhere, right? You learn how to code, you go make 6 figures, right? Yeah. You learn STEM, you can do that. If you want to be say you want to be a content creator, I better hope you really like making content, because you're gonna have to make a lot, like a lot. Like I don't think people they think there's especially with there's different forms of entrepreneurship, but now I think like the sexy buzzword entrepreneur type is like the content creator, where they're on Instagram, they're doing reels, they're writing. Dude, this shit is hard, and not hard in that it's difficult, but it's just like you just have to do so much repetition and volume, right? So take, for example, podcast. The vast majority of podcasts don't make it longer than 90 days, where they stop shooting episodes. Like that's where the cutoff is.
Past like episode 10, I think it is.
Basically, past like episode 10, right? When it comes to writers, most writers, they're toast before before they even hit 90 days. They're done. Most content creators, the YouTube channel, they're toast before 90 days. Right, so really, if you want to get into that's why I tell people if you want to get into content, you have to you really have to enjoy it. Like me, writing, I've never empathized with the idea that writing is hard. From I had to get better at it, but writing has always been super easy to me. I can write a 3,000 word blog post if I felt like it in an hour. It's really, really easy. So that's why I tell people find things that are easy for you and hard for other people to do. And compete with them that way.
I think that something that's interesting that you were talking about is how a lot of the things with writing could be traced back to your childhood. So I think when it comes to finding your thing, your craft, I think it should have some sort of alignment with some sort of knowledge that you gained as a child.
Yes.
because otherwise you're almost like doing more work than you have to, because you already have had some sort of foundation built, because as a child you were naturally drawn to these things. You were doing things that kind of sharpen the sword. So therefore writing kind of just took off for you because had already been working up to that your whole life.
Yes.
Whereas I feel like a lot of people will try to do what they see other people doing that's successful by that person just being them, with denying like the things that, they were drawn to as a child. So the question that I had for you that was coming up when you were talking about that is, what advice would you give someone if there's, say they just graduated high school, they're not in college, and they're like, okay, I know I want to be an entrepreneur. I know maybe I want to create content, but I don't know what the fuck, like what direction to go,
Yeah.
or what to talk about, or what to do. What advice would you give that person?
Yeah. So like if you're if you're specifically thinking about creating content, just like first start with the things that are fascinating to you, right? So I ask people questions like, what are the things you naturally talk about already, right? So I have so many friends who like they're super into sports. They have like they could tell you the statistics of every player. They're constantly talking. I'm like, bro, I was like, at this point you already doing it for free. Like you might as well start the podcast or the YouTube channel or the blog or whatever it may be. And there's some people who do that. So like really take your interest and then see if there's just find if there's other people like talking about similar things online. Like, so what you don't want to see is that like there's absolutely no one talking about what you're interested in, but you just find an overlap between what you're into and what other people are into, right? So like I've seen so many different models of people making content, whether it's people doing makeup tutorials on YouTube, or people have an online course about sustainable gardening, right? Like there's 7 billion people on planet Earth, right? So your interest, you're probably not so unique that there aren't other people like you who are interested in the same thing as you, right? So the thing that works best is to talk about something you're interested in. And what I would avoid is people who, instead of talking about what they're interested in, what they use their content for is like they use it as like a diary, basically. So like that's a big problem I see like a lot of writers have. They're kind of just like writing random details about their life. It's like, okay, you want a little bit more of a theme than that. Like you want to find a topic that resonates with you and that you can write about. And so it is really just tapping into things traced back to your childhood, right? So like what are some things that people have always commented you on, like, oh, you're always talking about this, you're good at this, like, oh, like maybe you have really good style, right? Maybe you're really a really good communicator and you're charismatic and you're social. Maybe people do come to you for advice, right? And you could reach out into that lane. But it's really just picking a topic that you want to run with, and B, literally actually just running with it. The biggest problem I see with especially content creators is they don't create any content. Mm-hmm. Like I'll just tell you, like doing your show just for long enough to see what sticks is good enough. Joe Rogan, if you look at his very first episode of his podcast, it's literally him and his friend like looking at a computer, like doing goofy shit. It's not recognizable, not even close. Mm-hmm. If you would have looked at that podcast and been like, this is going to be a podcast worth $1 billion, I would have like laughed you out of the fucking room. But it's literally just staying power. So like my first piece of advice, pick one style that you want to work with first and get good at that, right? So before I started a YouTube channel, before I started doing Reels, before I did TikTok, I was only written. I just did written blog posts, right? So if you're more of a writer, stick with writing. If you're more into audio, you can do audio. If you want to be on camera, then maybe do the YouTube stuff. And the good thing about where it is right now is like even in like the audio and video realm are pretty much like blended together now. So like if you're doing a podcast, you might as well record it and put it on YouTube, like, and vice versa, right? So you could take, if you have YouTube videos, like you could turn that stuff into podcasts, right? So it's either like, are you really in the written form or in the audio visual. And then the next thing is just do it enough times to get a track record. It's like there's this good rule called the rule of 100. It's from this woman named Cami Pham. She like owns this marketing agency, bunch of followers, yada yada. But she's like, you know, your first 100 blog posts are gonna suck. Your first 100 YouTube videos are gonna suck. Your first 100 shows are gonna suck. Whatever. And at that point, after you do 100, you're gonna have a better idea of what you're interested in and what resonates, right? So like a lot of people, their content and like their channels pivot over time, but you can give yourself time to pivot by doing the work. And what I think the main struggle people have is they're looking for this perfect unifying theme, like this perfect niche. Like there's a lot of advice out there that says like, all right, you have to have your perfect niche. Like you have to do fitness content for single moms who just gave birth, 40 years old, who live in Kentucky. It's like, no, you don't have to do it that way. Like if you really want to create a back end product like right away, the more narrow your niche, the better. Mm-hmm. But what I find is most people, they really overthink it. So really it's just a matter of, if you can make it past, like I tell people, try whatever form of content you're trying to do for a 90-day experiment. Whatever your process goal is, like if you want to get one episode done a week, do one episode a week for 90 days and do not quit. And then you can judge the direction you want to take your show. If you want to do YouTube videos twice a week, do it for 90 days. Get that, what's that, 24 videos up. Write a blog, write something for your blog every single day. Write tweets every single day for 90 days, whatever it is. But get it to that 90-day mark. Because that 90-day mark, I'm dead serious, like 90% of people are done before then.
Why do you think that is?
It's probably the same reason why most people are out of shape. The same reason why, you know, people go get gym memberships every year, but they don't actually go. Same reason why people keep talking about their goals that they're going to do every single year and they don't do them. It's just, here's what I found. Here's the biggest difference, right? Because when you give people rules and structure, they'll do it. If they know what to expect beforehand, they'll do it, right? So like take for example, a lot of people, they're like, oh, I struggle, you know, I don't have the discipline to work years at a business. Well, I'm like, well, you went to college for 4 years, but you knew exactly what was required to pass the test. You knew that there was going to be a definitive outcome. You were going to get that degree and you were likely going to be able to get a job in that field. So since everything was paved for you nicely, then you were fine at doing it, right? And I actually remember one class, we had a sales and marketing class. And there was this guy, he was like a retired entrepreneur. He had done like real estate sales, all that stuff. So like he was kind of just doing the class as like, you know, to give back to the community. He gave us no homework. There was like really no test. It was literally just him sitting there. It was like, all right, here's how you make a lot of fucking money. And he would just literally sit there and talk for like an hour and they tell you how to make money.
That's dope.
I loved it. Most of the other students, like, they hated it. They wanted the rubric. They wanted, all right, here are all the boxes you check off. So people are trained from like a young age to go through those systems that have a system of boxes for you to check off. And as soon as there's not boxes to check off, then people don't know what to do. Because there is no rubric for becoming an entrepreneur. Like there's courses, but you might have to take a couple different courses and try a couple different things and bump your head. Like for example, I've launched products that got 0 sales. My first book didn't do very well. Like so, there's these little hits and misses. You have to get on the phone and maybe try to convince someone to buy something from you, and it's like nerve-wracking. All these little things where there's uncertainty. So people have a really hard time handling uncertainty. If you give them the structure, they'll do it. People go to work every day. It's like you have no problem going to work every day, right? It's because you know what the outcome is. And people are trained to expect certain outcomes, right? And that's another reason why it's really hard for people to create content, is because they're used to getting an exact output for the time that they put into something, right? That's like linear, right? So you know you're gonna get, if you're getting paid $25 an hour, you know you work 8 hours, you're gonna get $200, whatever the number is, right? But the way that it works in content creation or entrepreneurship, you might work for years and not make any money, right? I remember there was this guy who came and did a talk at Winona State when I was in school, and basically he had owned like this financial services franchise where he said based on how much he was working and the deals he was landing, like his first couple of years, he was making essentially like what a McDonald's worker would make because he was building the foundation, right? He was building relationships, like doing outreach, trying to get the clients. Well, fast forward, half a decade later, then he's a millionaire, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like in entrepreneurship, you do the work up front, but you don't get the money until the back end. But the way that it works is you get exponential rewards. Like all of a sudden, it's like basically, for like the first 3 or 4 years of my writing career, I barely made any money. Then in the year 4, I had made more money than pretty much every other year of my life combined. Mm-hmm. But that didn't happen until I was willing to like sweat it out and gut it out, not making much cash, just building the skills, building the network, building the base. Then you give yourself room to take off. But people just don't want to wait for that, right? They want to go to the gym and get a 6-pack tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that's just not how it works. Like people they just have a really hard time with uncertainty and delayed gratification. And it's just like you just have to do like a lot of reps. And that's the hard part, is just doing reps over and over and over and over. So
I think you just connected a really interesting dot for me, and I didn't realize it until now, but I think the reason that a lot of people, there's a correlation between people who like kind of struggle with school or don't really like school and entrepreneurs. I found like a lot of people who like didn't like school, they have the desire to be an entrepreneur. And maybe the reason that correlation is because they are able to deal with that uncertainty, and they kind of feel sick having to be in this monotonous, same regimented schedule, knowing the exact outcome. To be an entrepreneur, as you're describing, you have to be able to consistently put in reps when you don't know the outcome, which is way different than what the school system actually creates. So it's just an interesting correlation that I just realized, is that that's maybe why people who don't really resonate with the current school system become entrepreneurs, because they would rather create something, deal with uncertainty, than have to like do this monotonous, almost robotic way of life. Yeah. And I think that's what I think the power of the internet is really exploding people's minds, is because we now have an opportunity to learn in a different way. And that's why courses are more important than YouTube videos, because there is that aspect of us having to have that regimen and having to have structure for us to be able to learn better, because all the information is probably on YouTube or Google. But the second you buy a course, you can you're buying the structure and just the efficiency of being able to go through it faster than just, watching through it all on YouTube. Yeah. And something that happened for me after I dropped out of college is I realized my education didn't want to stop. I wanted to continue to learning, and then that's where I started to see all these online courses. So I bought this course it was how to start a marketing agency. It was like $1,000. Yeah. I didn't even have $1,000. I actually got my parents to give it to me because I was just out of college. Yeah. And so I started a marketing agency, and I didn't make any fucking money. Yeah. But I learned a lot from it. Yeah. Like I was able to see, the things from the ground up. I did the branding. I started to build out my service list, and I started to do cold calling and reaching out to people. And although I didn't make any money, I still learned a lot, which then transferred into the next vehicle. Yeah. And I think it's important that even when you hear the statistics like, most content creators don't make it past 90 days, or only 6% of entrepreneurs make 6 figures, don't let that stop you from pursuing it, because even if you fail, that's not necessarily a failure. It's just an experience to learn. And it seems like you have to go through a certain number of experiences where you do fail until you get your win. Yeah. And if you can deal with that failure while still holding that further vision, that's where you will be successful. Yeah. Because the only person who actually has the vision of it is you. Yep. And if you can hold it steady in your mind, even when you're like getting kicked in the fucking mouth, like that's the price you got to pay to get there. Yep. I've realized all these entrepreneurs, you hear some of their stories, it's like, holy fuck, like you had to go through that. And it's almost like that's like your initiation. Like, okay, you want to make all this money, you want to have this life, the reason not everyone has it is because they're not willing to go through that initiation. They're not willing to pay that price.
Yep.
But if you're willing to like literally eat shit and just be on your face for a long time and then catch your break, that's where I feel like the successful people make it.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be you guys have to be relentless. Like you just have to be, and you have to take those gut punches, right? It's like most entrepreneurs will tell you that they had a major, like they gone through a point where they lost a lot of money, right? They lost they lost 6 figures, they lost 7 figures, right? We're talking about Hormozis. They went up to like $250,000 back to like zero like 3 times. Like I that's insane. Like most people will be like, fuck this, like I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
That hurts.
That hurts, right? And it's just a lot of like psychological pain. Not even like pain. It's just like failing and just like being able to start over, right? And just you have to like consider yourself the exception to the rule. Like, so I remember one of the very first online courses I took, it was called the guest blogging certification program, right? So this taught you basically how to write guest posts for other blogs and either get paid or they let you like put advertisements for your email list or whatever, right? So like that's what people used to do back in the day, guest blogging. So I took this course from John Morrow, who started this company called Smart Blogger, like multi-million-dollar company. He's paralyzed from the neck down. He can't physically write, so he had to dictate all of that stuff, right?
Wow.
He had this disease that he was supposed to die when he was like a toddler. He's like one of the oldest living people in the world with this disease, right? So that right there already took away my excuses. Like, all right, I'm not even like, all right, this guy built $1 million company. I think I can do it too, right? And then he had this like this very first video in the program, which I loved how he did it that way. The very first video in the program was him talking about why you're not going to finish the course and why most writers aren't successful because most people quit and that it's going to be hard. And for one thing, I think that really inspired the way that I talk to people, because like I like inspiring and motivating people, but people who are familiar with my content, like I don't really sell people pipe dreams about what I do tell them up front how hard it is, right? So I got a lot of that from John. But then second, kind of my attitude when I took the program, he's like, most people don't succeed. I was like, oh yeah, he's like talking about those other people. It's like, he's not talking about me. He's not talking about me. Like for sure I'm going to do it. And I've just always felt that way, to where, especially now, like, so like these days, I don't really like, unless it's someone who is doing similar things or has similar ambitions, like I don't go around talking about how much money I think I'm going to make or how big my accounts are going to be. Like, because people who aren't in that world or that same mindset, they wouldn't even believe me. They think that I'm just talking out of my ass, right? So that's just kind of that's just how, like, because most people are. Most people who say, oh, I'm going to start a business, I want to make millions. I'm like, no, you're not. But you have to be different, where you're like the one who's going to say, okay, I'm going to do it. And really the only difference is just staying power. So like if you look at all of my favorite authors or content creators, entrepreneurs, what you'll see is most of them have been in the game for 5 to 10 years. And then beyond that, some of them have been doing it for 10, 20, 50 years. Right? So look at people like Russell Brunson. He started doing entrepreneurship when he was in college. He's been an entrepreneur for 20 years, right? So a lot of these people have been doing things for that's like, at this point in my life, like I literally know I'm going to be working on content and or business until I'm dead. Like that's just, it's already a done deal. Like I'm going to keep doing it forever, right? So, Lord willing, if I live long enough, my goal, like my time horizons are now more like 3-year chunks, 5-year chunks, 10-year chunks, right? Because I know that if I have enough time and I structure things the right way, I can make some big swings over time to like make big things happen. And then what happens to some people, it's like once you reach a certain threshold, whether it's follower count or income, it's like it just starts compound like crazy. Like once you have like $10 million, like okay, the getting to 100 is not as difficult as it was going to be to go from like 0 to 1 million. If you already have a bunch of followers, then you can kind of use that influence to spread it all across other channels, right? Warren Buffett made like the vast majority of his money in like the last 10 years of his life, right? So if you give yourself time to compound, then things work out. So for me, like when I was doing the writing on the side, I just kind of gave myself I gave myself like 5 years to do it. Because there was this talk I watched from Jim Rohn, and he's like, if you give yourself 5 years, you can pretty much get what you want. I'm like, okay. So I remember watching that video, and I was like, okay, fine, 5 years, right? And so it's very interesting how timelines work in your head, right? So it's a pro and con where like you'll get things done, but I basically around year 5 got it done. So now when I'm thinking of timelines, it's like, yeah, I want to keep my long-term horizons, keep my long-term goals, but like even in the short term, like now that I know that I can execute, like now I'm like, am I asking myself, am I making my time frames too long? Right? So, there's this like thought exercise from Peter Thiel, and he's like, do a thought exercise where you try to achieve your 10-year goals in 6 months. What would you do? Right? So maybe it's not, the point isn't that you can make it in 6 months, but it's like, if you start thinking, you think about those results. And even when it comes to money, like, again, I was watching this talk, and this guy, he's like, ask yourself this question. He's like, ask yourself how you can make the most money in the fastest way possible. Right? So again, it's not like get rich quick, but it's like starting to think, it's like, oh, okay, theoretically, if you wanted to make $100,000 a year, you could find one person to give you $100,000. And there are people who do those deal sizes, right? So like that's, especially when I go like I'm on Twitter and I'm watching a lot of people doing these different things. It's like, yeah, some people, instead of selling a $27 ebook on Gumroad and trying to sell 100 of them, they just get a specific skill set. Again, like we talked about, first do the ropes of doing it for free, getting the testimonials. But let's say if you develop a skill where you can increase revenue of an e-commerce store that's doing $1 million a month, yeah, they'll pay you $30,000 to write a couple emails. If it's going to drive that much revenue, if you can drive as much revenue, more revenue than what you charge them, and they believe you, then they'll give you the money.
Yeah.
So now I'm just thinking about it that way, like ways where you can structure deals and just move things along, not get rich quick, but like also not making it take longer than it has to either, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think really what you're speaking to is this whole concept of leverage.
Yep.
And the first person to really open my eyes to that was Naval.
Yep.
That was one book that just fucking shattered my mind. Like I could not put it down for like, I read it over and over. I read it like only book I've read twice in a row.
Yeah.
And one of the things that jumped out in that book was this whole idea of leverage and what that actually means. And what you're alluding to is that having different skill sets gives you the ability to have higher amounts of leverage.
Yep.
So say you are doing a landscaping job and you're making $15 an hour. You don't necessarily have a lot of leverage because you're just doing labor work that anyone can do.
Correct.
But if you equip yourself with a skill like you were talking about, let's just say writing, and you are really good at writing copy for sales funnels, now all of a sudden you have a skill that other people don't, and you can use that as leverage to make more money. So then you are essentially making more money with the same input, but your input's different because you have something that other people don't.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing a lot of entrepreneurs talk about is it's really about like working your way up in leverage as you go.
Yeah.
So like first you might start off with like one skill, and that might be sales.
Yep.
Then you might start out with a skill learning how to run ads, marketing. Then you might get the skill of knowing how to lead a team. Then you might get the skill of accounting. Well, you probably should have had that skill earlier, but you know what I mean? You start stacking all these skills, and then you can just leverage yourself to do a lot more with the same input.
Yeah, absolutely. and it's the leverage in terms of skills, and then you could also have leverage in terms of like how you're able to pour into those skills and do output, right? So like one of my favorite concepts that I learned from the book Rich Dad Poor Dad is this concept of like creating assets that you only have to make one time and you keep getting paid for them, right? So I write that book once, I get royalties that book come in every single month, right? I have an online course. Like, it's not totally passive, but with, videos you have out and blog posts and SEO and like marketing. So like sometimes, yeah, you just get a notification like, oh yeah, I just got a sale of the program, right? So like a lot of the stuff I work on, like I like things where I could have the potential to like reach a lot of people at the same time, right? So like I like the idea of having a YouTube video, like because that's the power of the content thing, right? So in the beginning, like the numbers aren't like might not be that big, but for example, like let's say you do a YouTube video, it has 10,000 views or it has 100,000 views, maybe 10,000 people, or maybe say a video gets 100,000 views a month, right? That's like a huge channel. A certain percentage of those people are going to sign up to your email list. A certain percentage of people are going to go into that funnel and buy one of your products. And like that, once that video is there, like it's just there and it's going to keep coming over and over and over again. And then the bigger your audience is, the more you could just look. If you have eyeballs, like you can make money. Like, so The Rock, he just sold his tequila company for $4 billion, right? So I was watching another video from Hermosa, and he was talking about how he used to not believe in creating content, and one of the things that switched his mind was, he said he saw Kylie Jenner start her company and she made $1 billion, and he said it pissed him off to no end. He's like, she's not better at business than me. Like, how is she making more money than me? He realized it was because of the audience, right? So if you're Rihanna, you start a makeup company, $1 billion. You're Kylie Jenner, you start a makeup company, $1 billion. You're The Rock, tequila company, billions. Conor McGregor. So like, and obviously like we're not all gonna get to the point of being an A-list celebrity, but if you like, step one is capture attention, B, you figure out a way to capture value from that attention, and then you could figure out what to do with it, right? So if you have an email list, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, all you have to do is come up with something to sell, right? And now, if you have an audience, like let's say I was in an emergency, like if I was in a real pinch and I needed some cash like today, I could literally say, okay, I'm offering one-on-one consults. I will help you fix everything about your writing, $500 a pop. Send it out to my list of writers that's 11,000 people on it. Some people are going to take me up on that offer, right?
Right.
So when you have that audience and you have the skills to back it up, you can literally like generate cash on demand, right? Whenever you need it or whenever you want it. And then you take that cash and you can scale it, right? So I'm learning more things like, okay, maybe I take the profits from my products, I could pour that into ads, right? Or maybe I could shortcut my process and not even learn how to run ads and just find someone who's really good at ads, have them do the ads, right? So I'll learn enough about ads so that I know what to look for in an ad person. But boom, I could hire that out, right? Another thought I've been thinking of is like, I have extra money. One thing I'm probably gonna do is like, I actually want to land myself on a lot of different podcasts to like expose my reach. Well, instead of me sending someone 100 emails, why don't I just hire someone, give them the script, tell them what to look for. Boom, they land me the shows. I show up, I do the show, get more of the audience, to get more of the cash, to put more into the people, to go into more shows, to get more of an audience, to get more cash, to go hire. So like, you see how like you have to start to think about it that way. And like an interesting thing that I've really started to think about with money, and a lot of people have been talking about, is like the purpose of your money is to be able to buy back more time, right? So one of the things I've been thinking about is how if I were to take some of my money and hire people to do certain things, that would actually free me up to make more money. And one of my biggest struggles has been learning how to delegate things, because there's things that I shouldn't be doing still at this point in my business. Like, I shouldn't be doing them, right? I shouldn't be handling support tickets, right? I still am, right? I might not necessarily need to do all the outreach, even my content. Like, I might not for my writing website, for example, I don't need to be the one even writing all the content for that, right? So if you look at some of these people, like, yeah, they're not doing all this stuff themselves, right? So when you become more valuable, the next step after that is finding other people who are valuable, harnessing their skills, collaborating, and then that's why I always tell people, like, if you just do the work, it then becomes it then becomes this thing where it's like now it's this upward cycle, right? So like, let's say I started a podcast today if I wanted to. I know 100 people I can call that'll be on my show because you just built that network over time. And then I can have 100 guests for that show. I have tens of thousands of people who I can send that show to. So like it's like now with more ventures, you have more opportunities. But in the beginning, it was still nobody knew me. And you have to go through that point where nobody knows you. And when nobody knows you, it's all hard. It's all posting content into the void. It's all like wondering whether or not it's going to work out. But yeah, you can get a lot done in 12 months, right? And probably the only thing I would tell myself if I was going backwards is that I probably made it harder than it had to be, right? Because you can, in a span of like let's say like you could very easily, like let's say you want to start a business. Like, if you want to start a business like this month, right? Here's what you would do: find a skill. Let's say you wanted to do copywriting, right? Read a couple books on copywriting. Maybe take a course on copywriting. Boom. Okay, that's step one. Step two: do a bunch of outreach. Find people to do it for free first, so you prove that your copy gets them results. Step three: once you've proven you got results, get some testimonials from those people. Get some referrals from them. Combined with some more outreach you're doing, you have a business.
Yeah.
It's like you could do it that quick.
Yeah.
But it's the execute. So it's not like the time isn't the execute. It's not the time. It's like the execution. So like theoretically, if you wanted to be a maniac about it, you could go through that whole process and really like you could have a business that's making $10,000 a month, 30 to 60 days from now, if you were just dead serious about it. But it takes people a year because we like pussyfoot around it, or or even if like let's say you wanted to start even a really solid YouTube channel or a podcast or whatever, there could be such a way where you would go through and like actually do a bunch of research on exactly what works and just nail the idea for the showdown and just go hard and just, these things can be built quickly. And so like one of the things that has been interesting for me, especially going on Twitter, is just to see how quickly people put businesses together, right? Where it's just like they come up with like it's really just as simple as finding people who are in a market, who are in a growing market, who have a pain point and that will pay you. Like that's if you want to start any business, find a growing market with a pain point. Yeah. That people will pay for and have money to pay you. Then you can start a business.
Literally. And the thing is, it doesn't even have to be online.
No, not at all.
So this actually was like my first business that actually brought me cash. And I was in a pinch because the pandemic had just happened. Nobody knew what the fuck was going on. The gym shut down. I was working at a personal trainer at the gym. Once that shut down, I still needed to pay my rent, but I couldn't go to work anymore.
Right.
So I got the idea. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start cleaning people's cars. So I got the skill, and literally what that meant is I went and cleaned my car, my mom's car, and my girlfriend's car, and I'm like, okay, I'm good enough at this.
Yeah, you know how to clean the car. Boom. Exactly.
So then I actually reached out to a good friend of mine, Nick McLaughlin, and he put together a video for me, just like a simple marketing video, and it was called the Quarantine Cleaner because right at the beginning of the pandemic, and the whole spin on it was that I was going to also disinfect your car. From COVID. Okay, so it hit another pain point, right? Yeah. And especially in Rochester, like so many people working at Mayo, so many people were scared of that shit. But it fucking took off. Like it literally just took posting that one video, and then I just sent it out to as many people as I knew. And then every day I could get like 3 cars done in a day. So I would just leave, clean my 3 cars, collect all my cash, put it in the shoebox, rinse and repeat. I did that for like 3 months.
Yep.
And it opened my mind to like, wow, this really isn't that hard. It's just about doing it. Like it doesn't even have to be online. You could literally start fucking walking dogs for people.
Yep.
It could be literally anything. It's just as simple as like people have a problem and you solve it for them.
That's it.
Yeah.
Do shit people don't want to do. Right. Do lawn care. You could Like, I've seen so many examples. I'm like, damn, like one thing that now kind of like, not that I don't have empathy for people that I do, but I could just see what's possible for them. It's like, okay, boom, you want to start a business, you want to make some money this weekend. All right, if you have some money saved up, go buy yourself a power washer. Go to a nice neighborhood. Go to people who need power wash, and they have the money. They can see the benefits of it. Okay, fine, they'll pay for it. Go to people who are about to sell their houses. Look for the signs. Power wash, right? Boom. So now you're doing the power wash. You're charging X amount of dollars. All right, now you got some income. Boom. Find some people to also rent some more power washers. Find some people that will pay you, or that you will pay. Charge more than what you pay people. Boom. Like, you have a business just like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's over time it has really gotten it's gotten to the point now where I'm like, okay, like if I want to do something, all I need to do is like find a pain point, create that offer, and then just put it in front of people who would be interested, and then just do it enough times, right? And like another thing, it's the consistency, uncertainty, and then a lot of people, they're just uncomfortable. A lot of people are really uncomfortable with sales.
Yeah.
They're like for something for them say it like when you just say the word sales, like it feels icky, it feels gross, it feels like they're getting one over on someone. But if you think about it, like Steve Jobs didn't beat you over the head and say you must buy this iPhone, like you wanted it. Right? So you voluntarily give your money to people in exchange for things all the time.
And those are the best salespeople, the ones that you don't even realize are selling you.
Yeah.
Those are the masters. Steve Jobs, even Elon Musk. Most people would not consider Elon Musk a salesperson or a marketer.
Exactly.
But he doesn't put any money into marketing because he's so masterful at selling that you just fucking buy his shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And sales is something that I think, say you don't even want to start a business, say you just want to start making money. Another thing that I did is after that car cleaning business is when I moved down to Texas. So I took all the cash that I saved up, used that to move down to Texas, and I got a job in door-to-door sales. And it was terrifying.
Yeah, I could imagine. I could imagine.
Dude, and even for the like year and a half that I did it, it got a little bit easier because I knew what I was doing. But at the same time, there's always that fear. And I think it's because we have this innate fear of rejection.
Yes.
Because in a older time, when we were still in tribes and shit, if you were to be rejected, you probably would have got expelled from the tribe and you probably would have died on your own.
Correct.
So I feel like that's still in our DNA.
Yes.
So when it comes to selling stuff, that fear of rejection is never going to go away. And to back up to what I was trying to get at is I learned so much in 1 year of door-to-door sales, and it was just by doing stuff that I could have like never got from any other opportunity.
Yeah.
And I'm currently still working in sales. It's not door-to-door anymore, but now I always know no matter what, I can have a job.
Yep.
Because there's always going to be something to sell.
Always.
Everything, like this carpet, these chairs, this iPad, these books, everything in here was sold.
Yep.
And so now that I have that skill, it's like this sense of like relaxation. Like, like I'm always going to be fucking good. I can always just go sell some shit.
For sure.
But there's still that ambition to like want to do my own thing, you know? And that's kind of where I'm at now, is figuring out what avenue I want to go down to use this newfound skill of sales and, you know, build something even bigger. But getting a job in door-to-door sales, I think, is something that anyone, like even if you're in high school, like take the summers to do it. A lot of the way that the businesses are structured, they're summer programs. So you can fly out with a company. They'll pay for your housing.
Yep.
They'll get your whole summer set up for you. And all you have to do is just knock doors all day.
Yep.
And you do that for 4 months. There's dudes who make like $300K in 4 months selling door-to-door.
What did you sell?
I sold solar.
Okay. Because I had gotten, when I was in college, I got offered to do that, but it was like
Alarms?
No, it was like educational books.
Oh,
like
Wikipedias and encyclopedias.
It was like something. I think it was like encyclopedias, or there's some like for like educational research for like people like to help their kids learn shit in the summer, something like that. Mm-hmm. So I got invited to do that, but then I had got arrested like right at the same time. So I was like, fuck, I don't.
Do you want to tell that story? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, so I used to sell weed. I used to sell weed.
Entrepreneur from the jump.
Exactly. A lot of entrepreneurs used to sell bud for sure. But yeah, I was doing that. Again, it was kind of just like, 'cause I just didn't want to have a job. I just wanted to be able to just do my own thing, right? So I was selling weed. Place got raided. Place got raided. I had like a couple ounces of weed on me, so I was on I was on felony probation for 2 years.
Damn.
Or no, I was on felony probation for 5 years. It was like the maximum. Then I got done with it a little bit early, but then I actually ended up going to jail for a little bit because like I violated my probation because I was like still selling weed. So like I used to fuck up a lot, right? But I think in there, but like even throughout that whole time in my life, like I had always I had like the idea of like working a job just never sat right with me. So I
Yeah.
was always doing something, right? So in high school, I sold like Cutco knives, right? Funny thing about Cutco knives, one of my buddies from high school, he still sells Cutco knives. Dude makes like 300 grand, 400 grand a year selling knives.
Stuck with it.
Stuck with it, right? So I did the Cutco knives. I did I did like the MLMs and the
Yeah.
pyramid schemes and sold weed and like did all these different things because like I was always looking for that thing. And like I think what the reason why I liked it or why I didn't like a job or like there's like this correlation between job and school that I didn't like. And it was basically if you're like a top performer at a job or in school, like you're not appropriately like compensated for that, right? So take for like a job, like if you're like way, like there's no way that every single person in the company is like equally talented and valuable, and not in even they do pay people differently, right? But some people are actually like 10x more valuable than their coworkers, but they usually don't get paid 10x that unless they're in sales, right? Or like if you're talking about school, one thing that I hated about school was like I'd go to class, I'd listen, I'd pay attention, I'd raise my hand, I could explain the concept. But because I didn't jump through like some arbitrary hoop of like doing homework about things I just already explained to you that I knew how to do, why am I being punished for that, right? So like one of my favorite classes in high school, what was this math teacher? She was like, yeah, if you understand the concepts, you don't have to do homework, just take the test. Like homework are for people who need the extra practice, right? So what I never liked about the school system or about the employment system is it's just like this just trying to like level out and like homogenize people into the same thing. And I like the concept of sales or entrepreneurship because you take all the risk, but then you also get like the appropriate compensation for your effort.
Yeah.
And you can like take that unlimited as much as you want. So like that's why I like it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a fun game to play. Like money, like I don't like money's cool. Money's cool, whatever. But at this point, like getting rich isn't really necessarily about the money. It's about like it's just one of the scoreboards of performance that we have that you use to like measure your progress and your productivity and your capability. So like now it's just like the fun. It's like the fun of the game, like seeing what you have to build in order to get like certain outcomes. So it's just the sky's the limit. So we'll see how well I do, but yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Dude, I think this is why we get along so well because that concept has always pissed me off too. Like just the fact that no matter what, if I clock in 8 hours, no matter how hard I work or how less hard I work, I will get the same amount of money.
Exactly.
That always pissed me off.
Me too.
And now, like there was a point even last year where I had to go back and get a job because being in the pits of entrepreneurship, I got kicked in the mouth and I was broke.
Yep.
So I had for like a month had to go get a job. And the whole time, I was reading books, doing podcasts, talking to these people about how we could be making more money and nobody got it. And I feel like it's because they were still in that mindset of just like clock in, clock out, which is fine, but it just never resonated with me.
Yeah.
And the thing about entrepreneurship is it really is like a game. Like it's a game that runs deep on so many levels. It's almost like a reflection of where you are as a person.
Yeah.
I think it was Jim Rohn who said this, and he said, don't become a millionaire for the money, become a millionaire for the type of person you have to become.
Yep.
And entrepreneurship almost becomes this vehicle of self-development.
Yes.
And then there's obviously great fruits along the way that you can do with money that you couldn't do if you didn't have money. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I feel like we all just want to like play this really tough game. Like even just hearing like, oh, only 6% of entrepreneurs make over 6 figures. Like, fuck. Okay, I want to figure out how to be in that 6%, even above that. Like this game is hard. That almost makes it more satisfying to be playing it.
For sure. It's super. Yeah, dude. Like every day I wake up, every day I wake up, it's stressful, it's chaotic, like shit's going on, like someone has a problem with this, or I gotta go do this, or I gotta go to this meeting or do this coaching call, or someone has this question about a bit, and it's just like
Constantly
it's just
putting out fires.
constant, but it's like I wouldn't have it any other way, and it's like it's really it's just really like really just pushing your own limits, right? So like a lot of people will talk about spirituality like, oh, I meditate every day and mindfulness and all that stuff is great. Like I meditate too, like I practice mindfulness too, but there's only so much of a spiritual journey you can go sitting in your living room doing breathing exercises, right? Put yourself out into the world and face those, like that's what entrepreneurship is about. It's about facing demons, because you know what, you will try some shit and it will fail and you will feel terrible and it'll be embarrassing and it'll be awful. You will try to sell something and it won't work. You will try to fulfill on a service and it won't work the way you thought it would. Like you will go through all of these, you will lose money, you will have all these gut punch moments. But then if you actually keep going, then you're like, okay, I've been through it, right? So you feel like you have more of the, I feel like people who don't go through some sort of path like this, like you're like missing out on the totality of like human experience, right? To where you want, like you don't want, like you want to be successful, obviously, but it's that contrast that makes things good, right? Happiness is like, if there was no possibility of being sad, then you wouldn't, then being happy wouldn't feel good. If there was no possibility of losing, then winning wouldn't feel good, right? So you go to the Super Bowl, one team, it's like the biggest moment of their life. The other team, it's like the biggest, hugest letdown of their life, right? But it's that duality like that makes it fun. And I think a lot of people like basically being employed is just a hedge against risk. That's pretty much what it is, right? You just want to have that safety and security, but you just see like, and I don't even know if the answer is necessarily entrepreneurship or maybe even just like having a hobby or something, but like I don't know the way you feel, but like sometimes when I walk around, I see the way people, treat their bodies. I see like whether or not the lights are on in their eyes, their expressions, the way they walk, and it's fucking horrifying. Like I literally walk around and I'm just like, holy shit, like most people are just like totally, completely out of it. And I feel like ever since the pandemic, it's gotten worse. Ever since, the more we have the social media and like this politics, all this culture, like people are just like continue, like it honestly, it's honestly surprising. It's like maybe it's just that way for us because like we always like kind of thought outside the box and like had like this disdain for authority, but like it's really shocking like how obedient people are and how they will just listen to whatever they're told about how life is supposed to work, and they just like, okay, I'm just gonna go with it. And I'm like, there's so much more to life than that. And yeah, I don't know, don't know if there's any way to get through to them, but like I don't know, if I look around, like a lot of people don't look happy to me, dude. It's just based on, so like there's some people who are, but like based on a lot of people I see, I'm like, holy shit, like they're just, I just couldn't even imagine what it would be like to be like that. But
and I even felt myself slipping back into that when I had a job. And I knew I had to have that job for that period of time. But I could just feel myself getting sucked into like, oh, I could just do this forever and ever and ever. And just my life would be over. But there's this level of spiritual development that comes from like, nobody's handing you money today. You got to go and get it. It's a parallel to how we used to operate in days of hunting. The men had to go out and get the animal to bring food back to the tribe to feed them. And entrepreneurship is a parallel of that. Like you literally eat what you kill. And if you don't go out and hunt, you're going to starve. And that it's almost this primal drive that gives it this satisfaction of knowing like, okay, I did this for myself. And I really made it, not because I just clocked in and someone gave it to me, like I really earned this. And this is a little bit of a pivot before we wrap up here, but I did want to talk to you about this. What do you think the intersection is of psychedelics and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I mean, I've had my I've had some recent forays into the psychedelic world that has treated me quite well, and I think really, um, I think the concept of using psychedelics, like in terms of like micro dosing or creating that schedule where it helps regulate your mood or enhance your creativity and productivity, and really removes like the really beneficial thing I would be think it would be like to remove some of those blockages,
Mm-hmm.
because like some of the most marked experiences I've had on psychedelics were it's like the removal of the anxiety, and like just having more of the answers be there, and so where you could just go straight into doing what needs to be done and unlocking that stuff, right? And I've taken like a lot of the realizations I've had on trips and been able to carry them forward. So I think that just overall, I think it's just a good vehicle in general that would help people deal with some of the stresses and anxieties that would come with entrepreneurship, and like for them to just like maybe like mellow them out some and just have
Yeah.
them go on that gradual journey and just be able to continue to do more of that volume in some of those reps without being like as anxious about it.
Yeah.
And even from my experiences, like it is even help from um, just communicating and social anxiety, anything like that. Like it really helps you in all those different areas. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it would help people get like more of a calm, steady, even keeled approach where they could actually get some more things done,
Mm-hmm.
unlock some of their creativity, like while they're making the content or creating the sales page or reaching out to people or whatever. And I think it would just be in general just like a really really good tool for society
Mm-hmm.
in terms of dealing with that anxiety, because like I think that's probably like the biggest thing we have right now in modern society is it seems like in general it seems like people are more anxious than they ever have been,
Yeah. I
right?
would agree.
And so I don't think the answer might like I don't want to get too into murky waters, but I think when it comes to like the mental health conversation, like people get really touchy when you talk about it, or if you try to propose that like there might be some alternative methods
Mm.
to help them other than some of the things that are commonly prescribed, right?
Mm-hmm.
People get touchy about that, but I do think that there are some answers
Mm-hmm.
in the alternative, in things like psychedelics, in things like your gut health,
Mm.
in things like nutrition. Like I think we overestimate what modern society can do for us, and we forget to remember that we are animals that come of the earth,
Yeah.
and that the solutions might come of the earth and really from nature.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just kind of my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. It really is those basics that I think are the most important. Like eating a healthy diet, getting the right amount of sleep, moving your body and sweating on a
Yep.
regular basis.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be this, sense of outsourcing your well-being and health to some institution that is making a shit ton of money off you.
Correct.
And I think when you can really dial in those basics of exercise, healthy diet, good sleep, and then some level of emotional intelligence and maturity, whether that's through reading or mindfulness or journaling. Like if you can kind of combine those things and then you add on psychedelics as like a little sprinkle on top, I think that's really
Yeah,
where the power comes from.
for sure.
And I think it can get dangerous if, someone hears like an entrepreneur, for example, any time that they need to solve a business problem, if they're like, all right, I need to go take mushrooms.
Right.
Like if you're almost relying on that to solve your problems as an entrepreneur, I think that might be going away from the work and just sitting with the suck that you might have to deal with.
For sure.
But I think when we can orient our lives in a way where we do really master these basics of just honoring our body and being an animal, and then sprinkle on this medicine that literally just comes out of the earth, coupled with like a business, like that's kind of the life that feels most fulfilling to me,
For sure.
because it almost then fuels a business that's actually true and in alignment with yourself. Because I view entrepreneurs as almost like they're kind of like who I view as like the top of the food chain. Like for some people, it's like athletes or celebrities
Yeah.
or what have you. But I see like as entrepreneurs is like doing the most for the world.
For sure.
And I think what psychedelics do is they tap you in with this intelligence that allows you to see what's actually true for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get detached from the anxiety, the depression, the ego, all that gets pushed away. And you're just like in this true space with yourself. And I think when you can operate a business from that way, you're operating a business that's not just like tearing the world down.
Yeah.
Because I think there are businesses that, yeah, they make a shit ton of money, but they might be like contributing to global issues and social issues in a way that might be detrimental.
For sure.
So I think the real power is going to come in like creating businesses that actually improve all life. And you should be compensated for that because you're actually making a difference in the world, which is why I think entrepreneurs to me are the like, I don't know the right word for it, but like at the top of society, like they're making the most change. They're doing the most.
They wouldn't, none of these, like, none of this, like, none of what we have would exist without them. And it's just like, from every, like, that's kind of just the coolest thing about, that's like the coolest thing about society and like being a human being is like all of everything that we have created civilizations, businesses, art, knowledge. Like it's all just been like someone imagined something that wasn't there, and they're like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna make it. Oh, look at this. Oh, maybe I'll take this stone and like sharpen it. Oh, that looks cool. Like they thought of it and then they made it, and then it made things better. So whether it's entrepreneurs or like innovators, inventors, like the people who face that uncertainty and then create things that make lives easier for the rest of us, like we need those people and they're important. And I feel bad that a lot of people don't understand that, where they're kind of like pitting, like a lot of people who are employees kind of like to pit themselves against entrepreneurs or make it seem that they somehow deserve the spoils of like what someone else worked really hard for. And it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you can have your arguments about late stage capitalism, whatever. But as a whole, without that strong financial incentive to innovate, the rest of our lives would all be shit. So like, you guys should be thankful that entrepreneurs exist, because a lot of them try and don't make it, right? So it's that collective intelligence that comes through some people trying and failing, right? Because sometimes they hit on the right idea, but they were just 10 years or too early and they failed. But that created a stepping stone for someone else to make the thing at the right time. So like there's a lot of, it's not just the entrepreneurs who succeeded that made your life better. It's all the ones who put their balls on the line, or female, whatever, who put that on the line and lost. Yeah. And that's the trade-off that you do have to make as an entrepreneur. But we should be thankful for entrepreneurs because people were willing to take that risk, and some of them didn't make it. It's like you guys should all be like, we should be thankful for these people.
Fuck yeah, yeah, I agree, man. Before we end this, is there any like last messages or last words you want to leave with anyone listening to this?
I think this is what you said, what you just said a little bit earlier, is that like living a good life is not that complicated. Even like take out entrepreneurship, but like this, my core theme is kind of like, dude, just get some really basic things right in your life will be pretty much good. Move your body once a day. Dude, don't eat whole foods that are good for your body. Go on walks. Pick up a little bit of knowledge. Keep good people in your life. Put yourself out there a little bit. Like, there are just these very basic, it's all about that concept of repetition. I really like that idea of just getting these repeatable practices and habits that if you nail down a few things, you get good at a few skills. You don't have to do a ton. You just have to get a couple things right and just do them repeatedly, and you're fine. Like, that's all you need to do.
Because the concept and power of compound interest doesn't just apply to finance.
Correct.
It applies to your habits. If you do those basics every day for 5 years and you're from a place where you started out not doing them, your life's going to look exponentially different.
Way better.
So I really like that message. Thank you, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, this is great.
Where can people find you? Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so there's my website, ayotheauthor.com, AYOtheauthor.com. That's where most of my writing is. On Twitter, it's Ayo the Author as well, at Ayo the Author. Instagram, at Ayo the Author as well. That's pretty much my handle across anything. So if you just search Ayo the Author, like, you'll find all my stuff.
Dope.
Yeah.
Thank you, bro. It's good to sit down
Absolutely.
with you.